Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Luis Fernandez. A new program will soon help Duke brain tumor patients, their families, and their care teams with grieving. It's all thanks to a former patient's daughter who donated $250,000 to start a grief pilot program. WRAL News reporter Grace Holland sat down with her last week to talk about her personal connection with Duke, her mission to help people through grief, and her goals for the program. Grace joins us now. Grace, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Louis. Good to be here.
So let's start at the very beginning. How did you find out about this? Where did the story come from?
Yeah, so this actually came from one of our other reporters, WRAL Investigate, Sarah Kruger. She knows Rebecca personally, and Rebecca had kind of told her that this pilot program was in the works. And because Sarah and her are friends, Sarah was like, I probably shouldn't do the story, can be considered a conflict of interest. So she sent it to a few of the reporters here, including myself, and said, hey, anyone who has the time to highlight this program, I think it'd be a really great story. I agreed with her, reached out to Rebecca, and, she helped coordinate with Duke so that we could come over there and sit down with her to talk about it, as well as the doctors who lead the Preston Robert Tisch Brain Tumor Center there at Duke.
So you mentioned Rebecca. Who is Rebecca Feingloss? What is her connection to a program like this?
Yeah, so it's a really personal program for her. So Rebecca is from Durham, and she's been connected to Duke even before she was born. Her parents came to work at Duke Health starting in the 1970s. Her mom worked her way up to running the medical library at one point. Even she was telling me all these stories about how her mom helped with getting the internet integrated into the systems at the library, which,
Wow.
of course, was a big undertaking. And there's, books written about the work that she did with that. And then her dad worked in the endocrinology wing and worked his way up to being head of the endocrinology wing. But in the middle of all of that, when Rebecca was about 5 years old, her mom was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is a type of brain cancer. It's the most deadly brain cancer that there is. And she lived for about 8 years through her treatment, which, especially for that time period, is pretty considerable. But obviously, that's very difficult. It's a lot of treatment, very intense treatments. And her mom did pass away when Rebecca was about 13. And so from then, it was Rebecca, her dad, and her brother, and her dad, single dad, raised them. Rebecca went on to do undergrad at Duke, and she has so many great memories of going to Duke basketball games and even Duke football games. She said even though Duke football during that time was not very good, her dad was a big believer in, well, if you want to go to the basketball games, we also got to go to the football games. So she talked about all the memories she had going with him to that, and then she started her career and was working in education. And then in 2020, right before the start of the pandemic, her dad passed away as well of a sudden illness. And it really was a personal reckoning for Rebecca, where she realized that the way that she dealt with her mom's grief as a kid was sort of like, that was a really tough thing, and I got through it, and, now I'm okay. Which I think, given sort of the understanding that a lot of us have about grief sometimes, it's easier to do it that way, particularly, for the time period. I think her mom passed away in around 2001. Our understanding of mental health has obviously changed a lot in the last 20 years. So when her dad died, she realized, oh, I'm grieving my dad, and there's also a lot of stuff I've never dealt with about my mom. And she quit her job, and she started her organization called Grieve Leave. It started with documenting her own journey through grief, and then from there has spun into sort of on social media and online how to help other people through their grief as well.
Let's go ahead and take a break there. When we come back, we're going to dive more into this grief program and what the hope is to help others. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Luis Fernandez. We're speaking with WRAL News reporter Grace Holland, who's worked on the story about a grief program at the Preston Robert Tisch Brain Tumor Center at Duke. So let's just focus in on that grief program in general, Grace. What is it and what kind of work do they do there?
So the grief program is just getting off the ground right now. Rebecca was able to donate through her philanthropy part of her company $250,000. And that money is going to go towards piloting this program. And, when I sat down with Rebecca, she's so excited about it. First of all, she's a big personality and just very, very excited to be doing this in her parents' name, at the Brain Tumor Center, given her family history with both Duke and that center. But I asked her, I was like, what does this even look like? Is this counseling? Who is this going to help? All of that. And she's like, well, we think that we are the only one in the country, as far as we can tell, that are going to address not just patients, not just their families, but also the grief support of the medical teams at the Brain Tumor Center. And so the thing is, when you think about how do you help someone who themselves is dying? How do you help someone who is losing their family member? I think our brain immediately jumps to, well, probably counseling, probably support groups, things like that. And she thinks that's probably going to be a piece of it. As far as for medical teams, what does that look like in any workplace? I don't think any of us really have a clear understanding. Like, sure, it might be mental health services, but that's going to be a big thing that they want to do over the first 5 years of this program, is really figure out, what does that support look like? Is it peer-to-peer? Is it, counseling? Who knows? Maybe it's something we haven't even thought of. But there's going to be a lot of research into that. And she's really hopeful that that can then, help other groups and tell, kind of paint a picture for other groups trying to provide this kind of grief support as well.
And this just opened in August, correct?
Yeah. So it was just announced in August. So I think the timeline is, the ball is rolling at this point. Right. And along with that, I also want to mention, I talked to two of the co-directors of the Preston Robert Tisch Brain Tumor Center, Dr. Henry Friedman, Dr. Alan Friedman, not related, they just have the same last names, but they are good friends. And they also knew Rebecca's parents. They treated Rebecca's mom, Susan. So it was really interesting to talk to them, because in a sense, talking to particularly Dr. Alan Friedman about like Rebecca's mom and what it was like treating her, there's sort of this clinical mode that doctors go into that's like, well, from a certain standpoint, her treatment was pretty successful because she lived X amount of years and this, that, and the other. And I think that is sort of what's going to be interesting to address because, in a sense, yeah, it was successful. But she did still pass. And glioblastoma, as I said, still the most deadly form of brain cancer. So most people who get it are going to have to deal with this. So that was really revealing about just the level to which this is going to help the medical teams. And that's what they were also really excited about. And Dr. Henry Friedman told me about the burnout rate in oncology. I think he said it was about 20 to 30% of doctors. They get in it, they do it for 10 years, and they just can't handle it anymore because it is so tough. I think they were telling me that the Brain Tumor Center at Duke accepts about 900 patients a year and sees 900 patients a year. And, they have to, every month, they send out a list of these are the people that we've lost. These are the patients that we've lost. And it can be kind of lengthy.
Wow.
So you think about if you're a nurse or, I don't know, I would think even receptionists, things like that, and seeing that list, that could weigh on you. So I think there's a lot to be said for hopefully curbing that burnout rate and keeping people in this profession longer because it is such important work that they do over there.
That's, a side of things that I think gets a little lost in translation there. That compartmentalization,
right,
and what almost has to happen to get through the day as someone who constantly works with cancer patients. With Rebecca specifically, how much has her journey through grief in her life impacted what this program the hopes for it are moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's everything. I mean, I don't even think, just to say like, sure, like this program wouldn't happen without her grief. That's true. But then also, like, I think she had such a revelatory experience when she did start dealing with it. She was telling me about, grief is so personal and it can feel so isolating because of that. But at the same time, every single one of us on this earth is going to grieve someone in our lives. And so it is also the one common thing that we have beyond probably anything. And so she was saying there's so much, if we talked about it more, if we were more open to, acknowledging that we are all going to have to grieve someone is going to grieve us, maybe that makes those conversations more open. They're never going to be easier. It's never going to hurt less because the way that everyone feels grief is different, but it can just sort of open this conversation that she feels we should all be having. You
mentioned the isolation of it all, but there are people who continue to go through these things as well. One person I did want to point out here, WRAL, we are an NBC affiliate, and over the past few months, a very well-documented case of glioblastoma has been playing out on the Today Show. Chanel Jones, who plays a big part in that third hour of the Today Show, she's set to make her return to the Today Show on Monday when you're hearing this. Her husband most recently passed away in May following an aggressive form of brain cancer, glioblastoma. He was 45 years old. They were college sweethearts, married for 17 years. They have 3 children together. So just another example of the way that cancer impacts people and how they, peruse through their grief and digest it and move through it and move with it for the rest of their lives. Would highly recommend checking out the coverage that the Today Show has done on Chanel Jones and her family. It's very powerful, to put it very lightly. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it's really moving, and I think Chanel, that was such a good example of the kind of thing that Rebecca's really hopeful for, because it's hard to talk about that stuff, but she told her story, and maybe the thinking is there's going to be someone out there who lost someone and sees, oh, yeah, I felt something similar to that. And the other thing, Rebecca, going back to the program, Rebecca was telling me how impactful, she's like, what could this have meant to my family if we'd have had it? To just have that support. She's like, I'm thinking, she's like, I kind of pushed this down in a way that I didn't even realize until I was an adult. What would it have meant at 5 if someone was talking to me about, how are you feeling about your mom? And sort of walking you through that. And the hope that Rebecca has is, obviously she started this at the Duke Brain Tumor Center because it is near and dear to her heart. But her hope really is that it can expand beyond that. And, she was telling me, think about like not even just medical. Obviously, this particular part of medical has this high need for it, but, spreading it to other parts of hospitals, spreading it to other fields even. I mean, the thing that I was thinking when we were talking to her is, even in news, we talk about a lot of tough subjects. We see a lot of tough stuff. Having a better understanding of grief in this one area could go on to impact other professions as well, I think.
I go back to what you said, parroting Rebecca, that, grief is something that is inherently isolationist. You are stuck in your own mind going through those emotions, but it's something that everybody goes through. There is no escaping it. You are going to deal with it at some point in your life. So I'm excited to see what this grief program can do for Duke and for families that are going through all of this moving forward. That's WRAL News reporter Grace Holland. Grace, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lewis.
I'm Louis Fernandez. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.